Hi, and welcome to the Running on Carbs podcast. I am your host, Coach Val, and I want to welcome you to episode number 62 of the podcast. And today I am really excited because, as you know, these are usually solo podcasts. And today I have a guest with me, and I'm very excited to introduce her. Because our meeting was actually rather serendipitous. We met through a mutual friend, and I was just in passing having a conversation with this friend, mentioned the marathon that I'm going to be running on my 50th birthday. And she said, I know the woman who created that event. And I said, well, I need to talk with her. So we were put together, and I am very happy to have her on the podcast today. I'd like to introduce Lee Ann Yarbor. She is the director and race director and owner of USA Endurance Events. And I'm just going to jump right into our podcast today because we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on in the industry, a lot going on with downhill races. But I'd love you, Lee Ann, to introduce yourself just briefly and tell us a little bit about yourself, your company, and downhill races that you have.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Val, and it's an honor to be asked. So thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I've probably been running marathons for about 25 years now. Oh gosh, has it been that long? I can't even believe it. Wow.
Isn't it amazing how that happens?
I started distance running at a later age. I used to run, just casually. I was like your average jogger, for like in my 20s and my 30s. And I played a little bit of volleyball, which is kind of bizarre because I'm only 5'6". But that was the one sport that I loved. My kids played soccer, and I started running. I got challenged, actually. Someone challenged me back in the late 90s, early 2000. She said, there's this marathon where you get a necklace at the finish line, a Tiffany necklace at the finish line, and you can run the half or the full. I go, well, I'll train for the half. And she's like, no, seriously, you're going to train for the half? I'm like, she challenged me. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll train for the full. I ran my first full marathon in October of 2005. So it's been 20 years.
Yeah.
So my first marathon in October of 2005. It was the Nike Women's Marathon in San Francisco, and when you cross the finish line, I trained with Team in Training, and when you cross the finish line, you got a Tiffany necklace, and so I just thought that was the coolest thing. So my first marathon, my medal was a Tiffany necklace. So after that, obviously, I was hooked. I think I ran my first marathon in like 4 hours and 35 minutes, I think was what it was. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? If Oprah Winfrey could do it, I can do it too. And so she was such an inspiration at the time, especially for women's running, because I think she trained for the Marine Corps Marathon. Well, that just took off for me. So I started training, and then I started running. And then I ran Rock and Roll Marathon. I ran a number of marathons after that. And then Team in Training had asked me to coach for them. So, and actually before Team in Training, it was the San Diego Running Institute. So Dr. Runco, who owned the San Diego Running Institute here in San Diego at the time, had asked me to coach for him. And I coached for the Striders. Got USA Track and Field certified. I don't even know if that really matters so much. I got a few certifications for coaching and stuff. And then I actually coached at Christian Junior High School for a couple of years, and high school for a couple of years. In the meantime, I was running a number of marathons and half marathons. And then I started to, then a friend of mine said, why don't you just start your own running club? So we did a running and triathlon club called the San Diego Run and Tri Club. And then we turned that into the San Diego Run Club. And so the San Diego Run Club has been in existence for about 15 years now. And from there, that's where I met Karen, your friend. And so, and then from there, it's just, the great thing about running, and you probably know this, Val, as a coach yourself, the one thing about running in a run club and a group, it kind of holds you accountable to always be training. The hardest thing I always knew about running was just getting up and getting my shoes on and getting the motivation to get out the door, especially if it was cold or rainy, there's just not a lot of motivation to do that. But there's something that happens once you do that The running part's easy. It's the getting out the door. And something about being part of a club makes that so much easier, knowing that you have accountability, you have friends, and everybody's got the same goals. And that's what I noticed in the run club, is that we started to have, at the time, there was only a few marathons here in San Diego to run. That was Rock and Roll and Carlsbad. And we were training for those. And then next thing you know, everyone's wanting to do these travel all these different races. So I started to make it a goal to, well, first, my first goal was to try to qualify for Boston. And I did that running St. George. And someone had told me, you should go try running the St. George Marathon because it's kind of a net drop course. And I thought, great, that sounds much easier. Well, it is, obviously gravity is your friend when you have a net drop, but it's still 26 miles is not to be taken lightly, as you know.
No.
It's just, I don't care whether it's downhill or, I mean, maybe on rollerblades, but even then, I think that it's still challenging. So I ran my first Boston. I qualified for my first race a couple of years later. I think I ran I ran a 3:59, I think it was, and I needed to run 4 hours. That was the year.
Wow.
In 2009 was my first Boston that I ran. And if you ran and qualified for any race during that time, as long as you made it within 1 second of your qualifying time, you got in. Well, qualifying for Boston after that just got so competitive, and so many people, I believe, were running a lot of downhill courses, and so, or just a lot of people were qualifying. And so next thing you know, the following year, when I went to register after I qualified in another race, we couldn't get in. It just sold out immediately. And I think I was sharing this with you before. Then years after that, that's when Boston decided, I want to say it was in 2011, or 2012, they decided, well, listen, we got to take the fastest of each qualifying category. And so at that time, if your qualifying time was 3:50 and you ran a 3:49, you probably weren't going to get in, because typically you need anywhere between 2 to 3 minutes faster than your qualifying time. So that's how that all started. But then it also became a mission for me to run a marathon in every state. And I've got 36 states, and I've got 52 marathons, because I've run Boston a number of times. But I've got 52, and I've run California a lot of times because that's obviously where I live. But I've got 52 marathons, but 36 states. So I've got 14 more states to go. Taking my time on this. So what I was able to do is, when you run different races in different states, you see the things that you like, and then you see the things that runners like about a race. And so by compiling all those, I had this vision here in San Diego. In about 2012, there was a course out here in San Diego that just seemed like, I'm like, why has nobody put a race on this bike path, on the 56 bike path? Because it was kind of a downhill course. I'm like, this would be such a great half marathon. So I'd measure it out, and back then we didn't have quite the technology as like Google Earth or anything like that. But I was able to, like, yeah, we could do this in like, this would be a great half marathon race. And so I went through all the legalities and the things that I needed to do. And my first major race was the San Diego Holiday Half Marathon. That was in 2013. And I'd done a few, I'd actually helped organize a couple 5Ks for some churches and some nonprofits. We did that. So it wasn't like I went in there completely like cold turkey, just not knowing what I was doing. I knew that I had to get permits. I knew that I had to, get with police, traffic control plans, and those things, the big hoops that you have to jump, the big hurdles that you have to come over. And then all the rest is kind of just, there's a lot of moving parts in doing a race. It's not
of any event, right? Exactly. Especially a race with all of the permits and things you're talking about. Yeah.
100%. And it really all depends too, because it's not a one size fits all type thing. And every state and every city and every jurisdiction is going to have different rules and things that you need to do. It's all going to depend. And there's so many moving parts, and it helps having a good team behind you. So I have a good team of a crew that's able to help out. They know the ins and outs of racing. I think it's really important that your crew consists of people who've run marathons or run half marathons, or at least know what it's like to run in an organized race. So
Mm-hmm.
from there, everything just kind of launched off. And then my next big race, then I did a couple turkey trots here in San Diego. And then my next big race that I did, I decided to go out of state, and everybody thought I was crazy. And they're
Oh,
like, "Are you kidding? You're going to do a race that you in a place where you don't live?" I'm like, "Well, yeah.
uh-huh.
Why not? I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's not, it can't be that difficult." And that's when I found this course up in Washington, and it's the course to the light at the end of the tunnel. And they had a race up there, but they would open it up in June and it would sell out in like 2 hours. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, well, what if I do that same course in like July, And so we ended up getting the permits. And then, for those people that couldn't get in June, we opened up this race called Jack and Jill's Downhill Marathon in 2015, in July
Mm-hmm.
of 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And and there's just not a whole lot of races in July, full marathons where people are trying to qualify. It got
Yeah.
to the point that there are so many people that love this course, and we're using it to qualify for Boston because it's a gradual 2,200-foot net drop from start to finish. So
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't even look downhill because it's such an easy, it's almost like an optical illusion. You feel like
Mm-hmm.
you're running flat, but when you look at your watch, you're like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
I must be having a really good day, or gravity is in my favor. That's the
Yeah.
one beautiful thing about that Washington course, is that it is such a gradual net drop, and it's all the way. And another great thing about that too, about that course too, is that it is all hard packed dirt, as a dirt road. So what it used to be is,
Mm-hmm.
it used to be a railroad. And so they
Mm-hmm.
pulled the railroad out, and it goes, the first 2.5 miles go through a tunnel. So you're in
Mm-hmm.
this dark, wet tunnel, which is actually nice at the end of July. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're feeling a little bit of water drip on you. And I'll talk a little bit about that course
Yeah.
and what the terrain is like.
Yeah. We'll get into that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if any of your listeners are planning on running that, then. But
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty much the history of how it all started. And from there, I've got, I've put on a number of mini major marathon and half marathon events across the country, from Martha's Vineyard to Dallas, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, Florida, in the Florida Keys. We've done races in, obviously, California, Boise, Idaho, Washington, and now we've got a brand new one in Montana and the Poconos, which is in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. So on the east of the Mississippi and the west of the Mississippi.
So are you, I'm curious, are you hired by other people, by other organizations to create their races and like run their races, or are they your company's races?
So all the races that I direct and manage today are my own creation and my own races.
Mm-hmm.
I
Okay.
have managed other races before in the past. And really, for me, if I get asked to be the race director for a race, my goal is to train those people on how to be a race director. Because
Uh-huh.
if it's kind of like, someone has a baby or a child, and then they go, oh, can you raise my kid for me? I'm like, no, how? Because the races are your baby. They
Yeah.
are. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of love, and there's a lot of work that goes into them. You pretty much birthed them,
Yeah.
so why would you want someone else to raise what you just birthed? So, and I get it. There's, some of the organizations and nonprofits that I've helped in the past, have no idea, you know,
Mm-hmm.
how to organize a race, and they have a great venue and they have a great race, and that goes with the La Jolla Half Marathon. So I was the race
Mm-hmm.
director for the La Jolla Half Marathon for a couple years during the COVID years,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd asked me. It took them 2 years to convince me. About, like, listen, the goal here is so that I'm going to show you what you need to do. I mean, you already
Mm-hmm.
know. I just want to guide you through this. I'll walk you through this. And so now today, I'm not doing their races. They're doing them on their own, and they're doing a great job.
Yeah, I have to say, so I just did a podcast episode on that race as a review, as a race recap, because I just finally ran that race for the first time. When was that? May? It was last month.
Yeah, month,
And
yeah.
it was a very hard course, but you know what? They did a really great job with all of their event, like logistics, and the course is beautiful, although very hard, at least in my opinion.
Well, and it's kind of an iconic race here in San Diego. It's been around for a
Yeah.
long, long time. And
Mhm.
there was another race company that was ordered. So it's not like they'd come to me with a new race. That race has been around for a number of years, and they were just
Mhm.
transitioning race directors and those
Mhm.
directing. And I'm like, listen, y'all could do this. This is a Kiwanis
Yeah.
club. So I think they're
Mhm.
pretty much kind of doing it on their own now. I just kind of
Mhm.
help. They now have a new marketing plan, and so they're doing a great job. I think the
Yeah.
last year that we were there, we had Meb come and run the
Mm.
5K, so
Oh,
which
yeah.
was really cool. Yeah, so that helped, kind of boost them up in their 5K.
Mhm.
That probably think the largest number of runners in that 5K that year than they ever
Mm.
had. Obviously, you've got Meb,
Yeah.
coming out
Yeah.
with you, but yeah. So I mean, it's a beautiful course. But I
Mhm.
think what they've done successfully is they've highlighted that it is a beautiful course and it's coastal. And then you don't
Mhm.
even think about that ridiculous hill until you get
It's a good description of it.
to it. I run it a number of times myself, and it is, hey, yeah, it's a
It's gonna
challenge.
take me a year to decide whether I would do that one again, because 'cause I'm still in the boat of, yeah, I did it once and I'm okay for now.
Yeah.
It was
We
really
have
hard, but
we have another run like a race like that in San Diego in August, and it's the AFC. And I mean, same
yeah.
thing. Well, except, and I think that one is even more difficult because you don't hit that hill on Sixth Avenue until
Mhm.
mile 11. And you're
Yeah.
like, every time I run that race, I always ask myself, why did I sign up for this race? Because
Well,
that's
that's
always,
how I feel that's how I feel about the San Diego Rock and Roll with the big, 163 hill at what, mile 24, I think it is, or 22, one of those
yeah.
horrifically ending miles. Yes.
So that
So
was the second marathon that I ran, and it used to be different. So back in, I think it was 2006 is when I ran the rock and roll. It started at Balboa. It still starts in Balboa Park,
it
right?
does.
Started
Yeah.
in Balboa Park, but it ended at MCRD. So it ended
Oh.
on the Marine Corps base. And then they
Mhm.
stopped doing that. And then they did it so they ended at SeaWorld. So you hit that
Mhm.
163 on the outbound. So you went downhill. Now
Oh, okay.
they've changed, yeah, so I don't know, I think it's a lot better to run that direction, but
Downhill. Yeah, downhill sounds more enjoyable.
yeah, so
Well,
rock
maybe
and roll,
one day.
exactly, yeah, maybe they'll switch it back one day, I wish they would, but
Yeah.
everybody complained about that hill going up it or down it, didn't matter because of the slant that you were on, because it's a freeway,
Yeah.
but,
Mhm.
rock and roll is such a large company. They've
Mhm.
changed hands. I think that Iron Man owns them now, but
Mhm.
I think once they moved their finish line, they lost their grandfather clause to be in um, the beach area, which is the bay, which is
Mhm.
Mission
Yeah.
Bay. Mission
Mhm.
Bay has this thing where you can't run races between Memorial Day and Labor Day. So,
Oh,
but they were grandfather claused in when they were finishing at SeaWorld and at NCRG. So now I have no desire to run the rock and roll marathon anymore. I'm done. I got 14 other states to focus on rather than
yeah.
another in
Yeah,
San Diego.
you've got other big plans. And so
I know.
my big plan is to run the Washington, Jack and Jill downhill. So I have been training for that. I actually had an extended, training plan because within my training plan, I also wanted to do a speed plan to do the Carlsbad 5,000.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that's a
quick
fun.
background for
Mhm.
you and for also anybody that's new to the podcast. In July of 2023, I suffered a femoral neck stress fracture when I was training for the Long Beach Marathon, which was supposed to be my second marathon. And I was only 5 weeks into training and had to stop, and then I was sidelined for a year and a half. So, 9 full months of just like nothing, and then I had to build up from that. And so over this time, all that time though, I always had it set in my mind, I'm going to get back to marathon, to marathon training. I'm going to be running again. I am not going to let this set me back. I know I'm getting older. I'm turning 50. I started running later in life, in my 40s, but I did not care. I'm dead set on getting back to training, and so I really focused on just strength training, building up all of the muscles and everything that I need to, building tendon strength, and that's where I've been focused. And so here I am. I did a 20-week plan instead of your normal 16 to 18 week, because I wanted to do a fast 5K. So I PR'd in my Carlsbad 5000 5K. I was very excited about that. And then I just jumped straight into my marathon training. So now I'm 4.5 weeks out from the marathon. And there's not a lot of time to like change my training. So hopefully I've done everything right up till now, but I'm going to ask you some tips on that too, on downhill. But yeah, so that one is coming up. I'm running that at the end of July on my 50th birthday. So it's like my big celebration to coming back to marathoning, to recovering from my stress fracture, and turning 50. So it's a very important race to me for a lot of personal reasons. And so tell me a little bit about what I can expect, and for other people who are running this race or who want to run this race, what can we expect from the course? I know you've talked about the downhill.
Mm-hmm.
And you've talked a little bit about the tunnel. Let's talk about the tunnel, actually, if we can, because that's like a big part of it. I also have a client who I wrote a half marathon plan for. She's running the half marathon the day before, and she was so bummed that she's going to miss the tunnel. I said, well, you're just going to have to train for the marathon next year and run through the tunnel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's one thing about marathoning. It was that there was like 3% of the population have ever finished or completed a marathon. And now that there's a marathon every weekend somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
dozens and dozens and dozens, you have a lot to choose from. So if you're not ready, if your friend's not ready for this, there's a lot of great marathons all over the country,
Yeah.
but the one cool thing about this course is you start off, so it's dirt road the whole way, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, there's an advantage to that. When you're pounding pavement for 26 miles, by the time you hit about anywhere between 17 and 22, boy, your body's taken a beating.
Yeah.
The cool thing about dirt roads, courses that are gravel roads, non-technical trails, I'll
Mm-hmm.
call it, is it's easier on your body.
Mm-hmm.
It's that you're not pounding pavement. It's just easier. There's more give, and that's also really important too. So the type of shoe that you want to wear when you're running these non-technical trails, dirt roads,
Mm-hmm.
hard packed dirt road, gravel roads, is you want to make sure that you're in any shoe will do. So you can wear, your normal everyday road shoe. I highly recommend, if you're going to wear a road shoe, a Hoka or something
Mm-hmm.
similar to a Hoka. They make so many shoes like that now. Anything other than a minimalist, like, you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be wearing your Vibrams.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay. You're
yeah.
gonna feel it all. Feel it all.
I feel like that was a fad for a while, and then finally people started
Mhm.
like wondering why they were getting so many injuries. And that's one thing I want to bring up really quick. When I started coaching
Mhm.
20 years ago, people, we'd start off with 100 people in a group in January, and then by the time we got to race day, there was like 20 of us left, and the majority of
Mhm.
people were getting injured. And it was
Mhm.
really what they were running in. It wasn't so much about their running. So shoes have come a long way. That is the most
Mhm.
important piece of equipment that you can have, is you want to make sure you're in the right shoe. And the right shoe
Mhm.
isn't about the most expensive shoe. The right shoe is the one that's best on you. You want to make
Mhm.
sure your shoes, especially running downhill. This is a big, big mistake that people make, is they don't get their shoe a half size bigger. So
Mhm.
what's going to happen is the front of your toe is, no matter what, is still going to hit the front of your shoe. You should be running in a shoe size bigger than anyway, because your feet swell when you run, you know that. So
Yeah.
your toe should not be hitting the top of your shoe. If it does, you're going to lose toenails. You know, I can't
Mhm.
tell you how many toenails I've lost, but you just make sure that you get your shoe size, whatever you're good in, just a half size bigger so that you don't run into that problem, because there's nothing worse than that pain,
Yeah.
mile 16, 17, and you'll feel it. Trust me. And it'll hinder your pace. But I'd say the first quarter mile of the start line, and then all of a sudden you hit this tunnel, and it's this pitch black tunnel. It's really cool. You want to make sure that you got a headlamp on. I
Mhm.
personally, when I run that tunnel, I like to wear a headlamp, and I like to carry 2 little flashlights. Everybody's going to have a light. You're going to be in with a group of people, and they usually run people off in sections. I don't manage this race anymore. It's done by
Mhm.
Super Series. They're the ones managing it. I manage
Yeah.
Montana and Poconos now, but
Yeah.
I'm the creator of this race. So I've run it, and I've run it, and I've run it. When you hit that tunnel, it's you feel that coolness. You'll feel some water drip. Now the inside the tunnel, remember, it used to be a railroad, and so it's shaped a little bit like this. Can you see my hands? So it's kind
Yeah, I
of
could see them, but for those people who aren't seeing it because they're listening, it's just kind of arched with a camber, right? On
that's
the
right.
sides. Yeah.
Correct. So try to keep your focus. What I do is I try to find somebody in that first quarter mile that's going to be running my pace. I chat with some people. I'm like, oh. So what I'll do is I'll draft or run behind that person. The good thing about having that tunnel for the first 2.5 miles, it's not going to get you out super fast, which is
Mm.
exactly what you
Yeah.
don't want to do. And
Yeah.
I make the biggest mistake of going out way too fast. I'm too excited, got adrenaline going, and then I tire out. The cool thing about this tunnel is take advantage of the fact that you're not going to go out too fast. There's going to be a number of people in this tunnel, and they're going to keep you at a good pace. Once you hit outside that tunnel, then you can see where you're at, you can see where you're going, and then you can pick up your pace a little bit. But
Mhm.
you're going to be a little bit on a slant, or kind of like a little hill all the way down. It's 2.5 miles long, and you will see a tiny, tiny dot at the end of the tunnel. You'll see it, and
Yeah.
just make sure that you've got a good headlamp on, and then try to stay in the middle and watch
Mhm.
your footing, because there are dips. I mean, it's an old train tunnel, so
Mhm.
just keep your eyes open. You'll feel water coming down on you. Where the water is dripping down into the tunnel, sometimes will form a hole. So just
Mhm.
watch your footing, and that's what's good. So you're focused on your footing. You don't want to trip. You don't want to fall. You don't want to hit a pothole. You just want to make sure that you're keeping an eye on what you're doing. And then
Mhm.
once you get out, there's typically an aid station right out there to your right hand side, and there's usually a bucket where you could put your headlamp. You can leave your headlamp on. If you've got an expensive headlamp, my suggestion would be to turn it around the back of you. If you don't have,
Mhm.
so that way it's not bouncing in the front of you. There's actually really good headlamps out there right now that fit flat to your forehead. Super
Uh-huh.
cool. They fit flat to your forehead. They're not super expensive, and they put off a ton of light. And you could probably purchase them on Amazon. And then that way you don't
Yeah.
have this big like light in the front of your forehead that kind of bounces a little bit. And I
Mhm.
know some black diamonds that they make some really good high luminum, like 9,000 luminums or whatever. That's great. But I think the ones that fit flat on your forehead, you can keep it on the whole race and not have to worry
Yeah.
about losing it at the end. But
That's a good idea. Mhm.
yeah. So, look into that. A headlamp, super important. Make sure your shoes, you got the right shoes, and that
Mhm.
you got them a half size bigger running that downhill. Because trust me, and then make sure that you put some Vaseline in between your toes, just in case you
Oh,
get
yeah.
a little bit of wet, right? You don't
Mhm.
want blisters. Think of those things as you're running downhill. You typically are not going to feel any kind of muscle ache, until the next day or the day after.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I have to say that in my first marathon, I was feeling the fatigue by mile 17. For some
Yeah.
reason, mile 17 got to me right then. So I have a question about the dirt. So after we come out of the tunnel and we're on this dirt non-technical path, um, sometimes when I run on the crushed gravel path here in San Diego and different places, I get those little tiny pebbles that like get like thrown up from my shoes and stuff into my socks, and that drives me nuts. Is that something that can happen there? Or I've seen some people use gaiters, but then I've heard a lot of people say you don't need the gaiters, they just get in your way.
I would say you probably don't need the gaiters. If anything, maybe take an extra pair of socks, or take some long socks and then
Mhm.
fold them down over the top of your tennis shoes. You
Mm.
know, if you can do that, I don't know how well they're going to stay down there, but I
Yeah.
haven't heard of that being a problem. It's not that.
Okay.
It's really not. It doesn't really get gravelly until about, I would say, mile 21. Once
Mm.
once
Okay.
once you get on, you'll head straight down the John Wayne Trail, and then you turn right at Rattlesnake Lake, and then you're on this other trail that actually is part of King County, and there can get a little gravelly, but
Mhm.
I mean, I've never heard of anybody having any problems with
Mhm.
with gravel so much.
Oh, good.
Maybe if it were
Okay.
raining a little bit, there might be, a little bit of feeling that, but I wouldn't worry about
Mhm.
it at all.
Oh,
I
good.
have people wearing gaiters. I don't know if it's necessary.
It's not sounding like it, so glad to hear that, because I haven't been training in gaiters, and I think I've
Yeah,
worn them once ever, and I really didn't like them. So,
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, I think there's other things that you can do besides, having to put another piece of equipment around your ankles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Oh, good. Um, is there anything else I need to know about that one? Otherwise, I wanna talk about the BQ timings.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
other than that, I would say make sure that you get a lot of, as far as training, get a lot of speed work in, do a lot of
Mhm.
tempo runs,
Mhm.
on flat. Not don't I would, because the downhill is so gradual. I would just get a lot of tempo runs in. Running a tempo is a pace you can hold, but would rather not, and do
Yeah.
that for like 6 miles. With a 1 mile warm up and a 1 mile, and then just make sure. Super important. Everybody gets so anxious that they want to do like 22 miles the week before they run. I
Mm.
mean, I hope that the majority of people that are listening know that that's the worst thing you could possibly do. I
Yeah.
mean, if you didn't get 20 or 22 miles in any time, don't worry about it. It's actually going to hinder you. Even on
Mhm.
a downhill course, if you try to do it the week before, don't do that. Just taper. Just taper
Yeah.
for 2 weeks before your race. Whatever the longest distance is, then just shorten that. You're going to
Mhm.
be better off shortening that, and then, because if you're chomping at the bit, you're probably ready. So, if
Mhm.
you're feeling like you're chomping at the bit, like you're probably ready. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
That's
definitely
really,
talk a Oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, I said that's really the only other advice I would have.
Yeah. Yeah, when it comes to that mileage, I always talk here about, gradual build up, build gradually, conservative,
Yeah.
and I think that must really come. I mean, I've always kind of felt that way, but even since having that stress fracture, even more so. And just knowing that my stress fracture didn't come from doing things over, like doing things too fast. Mine came from an existing injury that I ignored and then threw off my gait and caused myself a stress fracture. So mine is a little bit different, but a lot of stress fractures do come from just building up too quickly, mileage too
100%.
quickly. And
100.
yeah, so I'm actually coming up on my what we all here in San Diego call the train run. So I know that you just did the train run, but you did a 18 mile, and I take a different path when I do the train run, and it takes me my full 20 miles.
Yep.
So yeah, so that's the one I'm doing, not this weekend, but next weekend. So
Yeah,
yeah.
for those of your San Diego listeners, if I'm going to do the train run, I typically will do the 20 mile. I do
Hmm.
2 miles out. Once I get
Hmm.
to Oceanside, it's taking the train from Solana Beach to Oceanside. You get off in Oceanside. I run north for 2 miles and then
Hmm.
run south, and then at 16 all the way back. So
Hmm.
that's how I get the 20 miles in. Sometimes I'll tell myself I'll do a mile out and a mile back. I'll go, oh, I'll just do the last mile out and back when I get to the finish. I never do.
Yeah, you got to get it out in the beginning.
So if I
Yeah.
don't do those 2 miles out and back in the very beginning, I'm not doing 20 that day.
Yeah, so that's the same as me doing strength training and running on the same day. I know that that you're supposed to, quote unquote, do your primary activity first, right? You run first and then do your strength training. Well, I'm sorry, but when I get back home after running and I'm full of sweat and tired from my run, the last thing I want to do is go in the living room and start picking up weights. So I always do my strength training first and then my run. So
Yeah.
you gotta do what works for you, as long as you
Yes,
get it all in.
exactly. If that's what works for you, then that's what works
Yeah.
for you. I
Yeah.
don't know. I think that's better actually than,
Yeah.
well, I get why they say that because you're warmed up, your muscles are warmed up, but
Yeah,
yeah.
so I just do a little extra warm up, and the type of strength training that I'm doing right now is not the, super duper duper heavy stuff, especially not in my peak miles of training. So my strength training right now is pretty minimal, just mostly for maintaining strength. I'm
Right.
not building anything at this point. So yeah, but if I don't, it's not getting done. Let's be honest. Yeah, coming from the coach's mouths here, right?
Yep,
Just do
yep.
what works so it gets done.
Right. If it works, yep. If that's what's working, then don't try to fix it. Yeah.
Yeah. So big news out of Boston. Boston, oh gosh, all of us Athletics Association. I was like, their name escaped me. The BAA.
Yeah,
You got an exciting call yourself,
I did.
and an announcement about some changes having to do with downhill races. And your races are primarily downhill. That's really kind of your niche market, it seems. So,
Mhm.
um, for those who haven't heard the news, can you share a bit about what news this is having to do with Boston qualifying?
Absolutely. So we have a race. So let me tell you a little bit about there's a Jack and Jill Poconos. Jack and Jill's down
Yeah.
in Marathon Poconos, which is in Pennsylvania, and it goes down. It goes through Jim Thorpe, really cool little town. And it starts on a trail. It too is if you were to be dropped in the middle of it, you would and open your eyes, you would think that you were in Washington. It looks almost identical to
Mm.
Washington. It's just not as steep of a downhill grade. I want to say
Mhm.
it's about 8 or 900 downhill for 26 miles. And
Mhm.
then we had just got done before I got this email from Jack Fleming, who's the president of Boston Athletic Association. That Thursday and Friday of a couple weeks ago, we just got finished measuring our brand new course in Livingston, Montana, which is Yellowstone country. So we're
Mhm.
literally at the doorway or the gateway opening up this course is in between Livingston and Yellowstone National Park. So it's absolutely beautiful.
Mhm.
When we got done measuring it with our course measure, spent 2 days out there, and it ended up being a 1,400-foot net drop from start to finish. And I'm thinking, oh man, that's just not gonna. I know how everybody wants to run like 3,000-foot net drop, but
Mhm.
you know what? I'm like, you know what? It is what it is, and it's beautiful. Literally that day that I got finished like measuring that course, I open up my email and I see a message from Jack Fleming with the Boston Athletic Association, the president. I mean, personally emailing me, I'm like, what? Little old me, what the heck is this? And he's like, can I have just a few minutes of your time on Monday at 8:15 in the morning? And I'm like, absolutely. And I'm like,
Mhm.
so I wanted to know what he was talking about. It's like, actually 8:15 Eastern time or 8:15 Pacific time? Because I'm like, okay, Leanne,
Yeah.
don't be such a geek right now. All right. So anyway, Sunday night I couldn't sleep. I'm like, couldn't wait. I'm like, why does he want to talk to me? So he calls me literally right at 8:15 Pacific time and introduces himself. Such a nice man. And I thanked him for the Boston Marathon. I thanked him for everything that
Mhm.
he's done since the 2013 bombings. I was at the
Mhm.
finish line in 2013.
Oh,
I had just
wow.
finished, and the girl behind me had gotten hit by shrapnel. So I thanked him for that, and he thanked me because that was my third Boston. That was going to be my last. And I
Mhm.
told him, I kept running.
Mm.
Years after I've done 8 Boston since then, or 8 Boston total. But he wanted to the reason why he called me was he was saying that they have a new rule now with any race over 1500 over a 1,500-foot net drop. You have to, so from 1,500, and you can correct me because I know I looked at this lesson, to about 2,999, right around there.
Mm-hmm.
5 minute, you have to run 5 minutes faster than your qualifying time. From
Mm-hmm.
3,000 feet to 6,000 feet is a 10-minute faster than your qualifying time. And anything over 6,000 foot net drop from start to finish no longer qualifies for Boston. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? My last race that I just measured is 1,400 feet. Actually, 1,399 feet from start to finish is Montana. So now that those new requirements for downhill courses will not affect anyone running and trying to qualify in September for Boston 2026. That's not going to. It's not until next year when you go to register for 2027 that's going to take effect. So this is a significant change. And to be honest with you, I was wondering when they were going to do this. I didn't know that they would actually be basing it on the net drop, but I thought so many people, which is one of the significant reasons why in 2011 that if you made your qualifying time, you couldn't get in unless you registered right away. And I think it was either 2011 or 2012 when they started making it, taking the fastest of each category. And so, and that's because of all these net drop races. Rebel has come up with a number of them. Of course, we've got Jack and Jill Washington that's over 1,500 foot net drop. And then there's a number of them. St. George, Utah is. And there's a number of races out there that don't have that maybe don't have the significant title like we do with the word downhill in it, but there's a lot of downhill courses. And, to be honest with you, most people that are running downhill courses are running those times faster. So maybe how this is going to look is if you run a race that's a 2,000 foot net drop or more, you probably are running faster, 5 minutes faster than your qualifying time. And I think how this is going to look is that if you make your qualifying time now, you make your qualifying time now, which is really how it should be. If you have significant help with gravity going down, there should be a little bit of a, I don't think people need to panic as much as they think they need to panic. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to, I'm not going to run the Rebel race or whatever because I'm going to have to run 10 minutes faster. Well, you probably would run 10 minutes faster anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a significant downhill.
That's a significant downhill. Yeah. You're probably going to run 20 minutes faster because that happened to me. I ran Canyon City one year when my daughter was trying to qualify for Boston. Her qualifying time was 3:35. Obviously, mine was much slower because I'm much older than her. I think mine was like 4 hours at the time. And we both ran 3:32. So I ran literally like 40 minutes faster than my qualifying time on a downhill race. She just made it. But, I would say that if you're running races and you're running marathons and you're on a flat course, you're almost at your qualifying time, but then you go run a downhill course, you probably will make that cutoff, even though that 5 minute or 10 minute deduction, you shouldn't have a problem.
Yeah. And I wonder if if they made this change, and I don't know if you have any insight, but I'm wondering if they made this change partially because their buffer times have just gotten so long every year.
For sure. Oh yeah, they've increased tremendously. And I think what they've done, actually, they've looked at the study. So when you go to register for Boston, you name the race and you put your time in there, and they have ways to like figure all that out. They're seeing the top. Well, that was one of them. Jack and Jill was one of the top 10 fastest qualifying courses in the United States. And then now it's ranked somewhere in the top 20 because there's so many new downhill races. And so they're looking at the top 20. Well, every single one of those most of them, I'm not saying all of them, are downhill, are net downhill courses. So yes, you're right. I mean, because I think last year was like almost 5 minutes faster.
It was significant last year. Yeah. I know there was a lot of disappointment. I know a couple of people who had qualified and then didn't. I mean, a number of people.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
make your time, you make your time. You know what I mean? But I think that it is only fair to when there's a significant drop like that, because like I said, I've run a number of races. I know what it's like to run 3,500 feet with a net drop, and then maybe 800 feet with a net drop. And there is or like Chicago, that's flat as a pancake, the difference is significant. And that's definitely what happened. Yeah. So people are just getting faster. They
Yeah.
even changed the qualifying times to be faster, across the board a while ago. So, my qualifying time hasn't changed in, I don't think, 10 years.
You're like, wait a minute, this is not supposed to happen.
I think that I just feel like it's always been right around there, because I think it was like 350, and now it's like, I mean, I'm 62, so I think now my qualifying time is, I think, like 4:20. So I don't even know. I haven't tried to qualify. I haven't run a full marathon in a number of years because I've been so busy putting on races than running them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Val. It has to do a lot with, I mean, you look at that, people are running really fast. And here's the thing too with Boston. If you run 5 minutes faster than your qualifying time, you're automatically in. That's how they would do it. And there are 3 significant times that you could register. If you were 20 minutes faster, if you ran Boston, and your qualifying time was 20 minutes faster, then you were automatically, and you got to register, I think it was a week early. So you just register your name and you're automatically in. Your name just shows up on the roster. Wow. Then the next one is 10 minutes faster. So then the next week, when that, or a couple of days later, I can't really remember. Then it's 10 minutes faster. I think it is. It went 20, and then it went 10, and then it went 5. And then anybody who made the qualifying time could register. And then typically those people, unless they ran at the time, is usually anywhere between 2 to 3 minutes faster, you probably were in. And now, I know over the years, it's just gotten significantly difficult because people are running 5, 6, 7 minutes faster than their qualifying time. Yeah. And then getting in that window. So yeah.
I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and sorry, podcaster, I can't remember the name of the episode I was listening to, but the gentleman that was talking, he was talking about the third wave of running boom. So like, this is the third big running boom in our country, or, across the world. And that we've really just, reached it, and that we're just in a running boom again. And I think that this is just another example of that. All of the people who want to run Boston, it's such an iconic race. It's not a race that I have done. Like I said, I haven't been running as long as a lot of people because I started in my 40s. And so, in one bonus, my time is it's a little longer. I get a little extra time than if I would have been running it in my 20s. But it's not on my list yet for qualifying. I won't be doing that at the Jack and Jill, which is too bad, given that I'd have the advantage this year if I was trying for it. But this year, I've already explained my goals are different. They're not time goals this year, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of them.
Yeah, you never know what kind of, you get a lot of energy too from the trees and the oxygen up there that's releasing, and you just feel real good, and you got gravity in your favor, Val. I don't know. You just never know. You might hit mile 16 and go, wait a minute, I only got to do this for 10 more miles. So I'm telling you, it's a great feeling. So you never know.
Is there water around that course? I haven't seen any. Are there rivers or lakes or anything along that course?
Oh, it's beautiful. You're going to go over bridges, like big suspending bridges, 1,000 feet above, a ravine, and yes, there's rivers. You'll run alongside a river around mile 23, 24. So on your right hand side will be a river. You run over a number of bridges. It's beautiful.
Okay. I was curious because I didn't see anything like on the map that I was looking at. It's really kind of hard to tell. It's just a drawn map. But I have this thing, it's just sort of my personality, I guess, and my thing that I always seem to be attracted toward races around water. So I was a little, for myself, I picked it because of the date, being on my birthday. But I didn't pay attention to whether there was water or not. But turns out there again, it's meant to be. There's water.
Yes, there is. There's definitely water. And one great thing about that course too is it's about 90% of it's shaded. So you don't have to worry about hitting the hot sun. He'll hit some sun towards the end a little bit, but it's not for a very long stretch. So it stays shaded the whole time.
And I'm very excited about your Montana race. I told you already that I happened across, before this meeting here ever got set up, I was going through Facebook and it popped up on my Facebook feed. And I actually sent it to my sister because I've been talking about going to Montana for a long time. And I just haven't made it there yet. And she and I have talked about it. She's, traveling all over right now. And she hasn't made it to Montana yet either. And so I sent it to her and said, "Look, summer 2026. Here's our trip." And then I found out it's your race.
It is. So I have a home there too. My husband and I have a second home there. This is where we have family that lives there and some friends that live there. We've been going there for about 20 years. And just in the last 5 years, we have our second home up there, trying to get our church and our kids to like move up there. but right now, it's basically a second and vacation home. So you heard of the show, the Yellowstone, right?
Yeah.
And they're supposedly, even though it wasn't filmed in parts of Montana, some of it was, it supposedly takes place in Paradise Valley. So Paradise Valley, that's where the race is. The race is Paradise Valley. So we're about 30 miles north of the north entrance to Yellowstone National Park. And if you saw 1883, which was the precursor to 19.
Oh God, my husband and I, we binged that one.
Well, it's funny because when we bought our house, our pastor asked us, he goes, "Did you buy your house in Yellowstone because of that show?" I go, "What show?" "There's a show."
Oh.
Because the show on Yellowstone. I go, "Brian, we got to watch the show." It made our property values almost double, but it's absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful there. And so the show takes place in Yellowstone. So we literally are, Livingston, Montana is the gateway to Yellowstone country. So Livingston, Montana is where we live. And it's the gate. They call it the gateway to Yellowstone National Park because the 89 freeway goes all the way down into the north entrance of Yellowstone National Park. So it's over right this year. It's over Labor Day weekend. I don't know we're going to do it next year over Labor Day weekend because it makes it too close to the Poconos race. So next year it's probably going to be in June, more than likely in June, late June. We'll see. There's a couple other races in Montana that are also in June, and I don't want to I don't want to compete with anybody else in Montana, but more than likely sometime in later June. But it's absolutely beautiful. We start, and it's a wide dirt trail. Same thing, a wide dirt trail on Trail Creek, and you head down from. Our buses drop everybody off at the start, and then you run. It's a rolling downhill, so it's rolling down, and then you make a left turn on Yellowstone, Old Yellowstone Trail. So you're running Old Yellowstone Trail until you hit the right along the 89, which is that gateway road that takes you all over into Yellowstone Park. But there's nothing more breathtaking. You can't capture the beauty in pictures, and I know that we've got really cool pictures on there, but it's just it's hard to capture the big sky of Montana. But when you get to go, okay, I know what they're talking about. I wish I could put this in I wish my eyes could paint, because it's hard to really capture the absolute beauty of Montana and why they call it God's country. It's absolutely beautiful. The town of Livingston it's like something right out of a movie set.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is really cool. The finish line ends in Sacagawea Park, which is right on the Yellowstone River. And it is where parking is and where bus pickup will be. So, and it's a big, ginormous park that's sits right on the Yellowstone River. Couldn't be more breathtaking, more beautiful. It's, to me, probably one of the most beautiful parts of our country.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to that too. I don't know. I just, you know how it is. Like as a runner and a racer, you're not even done training for this one, and all of a sudden you're like, ooh, shiny object, something, another
Exactly.
race.
Exactly. And our course, like I said, it's around a 1,400-foot net drop from start to finish. So you're not
Yeah.
going to get penalized anything. You can run whatever the qualifying times are.
Yeah.
Boston
So
is
I
like,
can qualify for Boston next year.
that's right. And Boston has a net drop, and this is what Jack Fleming was telling me on the phone. He was like, we are a net drop too, so we have to kind of, we can't say that anything that has any kind of a net drop because
Yeah.
Boston's a net drop. But
Yeah.
even though Boston is a net drop, it's in the beginning. You still hit that heartbreak hill. So, I mean, there are some challenges. And this downhill course, it's a rolling down, which is kind of nice. A lot of people like that. So you just not pound, 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 pound all the way down. And
Yeah.
same thing with Poconos. Poconos feels a lot like the Washington race, but it just feels a little flatter because it's not quite of a drop. It's 800 feet or 800 or 900 feet from start to finish. So it's just really kind of a flat feel. The finish is a little uphill. It's a little bit different than last year's race. This year, it's because we're finishing in Lehighton, which was what we were originally supposed to do in Poconos last year, but they were doing construction on the course, so they shifted our whole course up. I have 3 course measurements for that course because so I guess I can switch it up every year, and it's always going to be a net drop. But we had to shift up the whole course up the trail, up the up that trail, the DNL trail for that year. And then this year, now we're bringing it to what we originally had designed it to be. And that's finishing in Lehighton where all the parking is and all that stuff. So you run through Jim Thorpe as opposed to last year. We didn't run through Jim Thorpe, but you run through Jim Thorpe this year.
Awesome. Well, I think our listeners today have gotten a lot of really good information as far as like the qualifying times, the courses, how to run them. There's just so much, and I even have a whole bunch of other stuff I can sit there and talk to you for another hour, but I won't do that to you. But I do want to ask, what's next for your company, for USA Endurance Events? Do you have other races, or just are you focused on these and growing them? I mean, obviously Montana is a new course, so what's next?
Yeah, right. Well, just first, I want to just reiterate that we don't manage the Washington race anymore. That's done through Run Super Series. So when you go onto their website, that's not USA Endurance. That's USA Endurance.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yes.
So don't call me and say, hey, can I switch from... You can switch between Montana and Poconos because we manage those 2 races. We have Run Super Series that's doing just Washington. So they're a solo race company that just does the races on that trail. So but as far as USA Endurance Events, we have women's races. We have the USA Women's Race half marathon in Dallas, Texas this year. And that's a little bit more of our bougie line. So we do a sterling silver necklace given to me inspired to me by my first marathon that I did, which was Tiffany and Company. We used to be sponsored by Tiffany and Company. Then Tiffany and Company merged with Louis Vuitton. So there went that idea of getting anything custom because Louis Vuitton doesn't discounts for anything, and no one could afford a Louis Vuitton necklace anyway. So, but we now do custom necklaces for each of our. This year, it's a sterling silver 925 sterling silver boot. Really cute necklace, sterling silver necklace. They get a super cute shirt and a super cute jacket with a really cool tote bag. We do a little continental buffet breakfast. We have massage therapists. We have music and all that fun stuff at the finish line at the park at the now my brain just went down White Rock Lake, down at White Rock Lake Dallas, Texas. So that race is September 20th. Poconos, Jack and Jill is September 12th and 13th. The reason why we're doing the 12th and the 13th this year is because the 12th is the last day to register for Boston 2026. Your 13th qualifying time will get you for 2027. And then, of course, Montana is August 30th. And then the end of the year is the San Diego Holiday Half Marathon on December 20th. And that one is ongoing for the last 13 years. So that's what we have going on this year. And then as far as, are we going to add more Jack and Jill races? I think we are really just going to highlight the two that we have right now. And then just they're awesome runcation destinations. That's what we like to think of, because how many people now want to go to Montana after that show Yellowstone? I'm telling you, it's changed everything.
Yeah, I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see how that race takes off. I have a feeling it's going to do wonderful because it's just so beautiful.
Exactly. Bozeman's the main city that you fly into. You can fly into Billings. Billings about an hour and a half away, but Bozeman's 30 minutes in Livingston, Montana.
Perfect. Awesome. And so how can listeners get a hold of you then? What is the best way to reach out to you or to follow what you're doing with your races?
So the best way is to just, you can email me at Lee Ann, LEEANN at usaenduranceevents.com. If you have any questions or you have some concerns or just questions about any of our races, please email me to, like I said, LEEANN at usaenduranceevents.com. I'd be more than happy to, I mean, unless you have a million listeners and I'm going to get bombarded with emails, you might just have to wait a few days for me to get back to you. But
I think you're okay. Are you on social media or anything that you connect with people on social media at all?
Yeah, our races are. So you can actually go on to like any one of our races. So Jack Jill's Marathon is one of our handles, or Jack Jill PA, Jack Jill MT, and then also USA Endurance Events. I don't even know if that one's still up, but I don't do the social media stuff. That's not my forte. That's our wonderful, my wonderful assistant, Ashley. She's the one that handles all the beautiful ads that you see, the ones that came across your feed. She does all those, and she does such a beautiful job. Ashley also can answer questions too. So Ashley at usaenduranceevents.com. But yeah, you could go to our, I would say just to go to our Instagram handles for Jack and Jill is the best way to get a hold of us and chat with us.
Okay. I think our internet kind of had an issue. Can you repeat the Jack and Jill Instagram?
Yeah, it's Jack Jill's Marathon. Yeah, I think that's what it is, Jack Jill's Marathon.
Okay.
And then,
all right. And you know what I can do is if you send it to me, I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, and Jack Jill Pennsylvania is Jack Jill PA.
Okay. Yeah. If you send those, I'll put them in the show notes, and then that way anyone who wants them, they just click on them. Much easier.
Perfect. Okay.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Lee Ann, for being here today. And, for anyone listening right now, thank you for, sharing this time with us, and I hope you got a lot of inspiration from everything that Lee Ann shared, from, managing races all the way to running them. I love this. It was such a great conversation. And thank you so much for sharing everything with me. And I feel totally prepared and excited for my race still. I feel really honored to have been able to talk with the woman who put that race together, who created it. Whether or not you're still doing it, it's okay. I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic race because we've talked about that, a race is your baby, right? So I'm sure that Sabrina probably feels that same way as the adopted mother, and is taking care of that race. So maybe I'll have an opportunity to meet her as well. That would be exciting too.
Great.
But in the meantime, anyone wants to connect with me, I'm at running.on.carbs. Of course, all the links are in the show notes as well. Check out my link tree and share the episode with a friend who's interested in downhill race or who wants to qualify for Boston using a downhill race. Get in there now. I think that was the message. Get in there now.
Get in there now. Start running.
Yes. All right. Well, Thanks so much. And don't forget, run your best life on carbs. I'm Coach
Thank,
Val. I will see you next time. Thank you, Lee Ann.
thank you.